Up next, we're going to perform a Git Rebase. So we have this situation now where our branches have diverged. We've got our main branch and our feature D branch, but we can't do this fast forward merge from feature D into main. We want to work on the feature D branch, so we're going to switch to that. Switch to feature D. Clear. And I'm actually going to split this here. So on this side, we'll look at git log, one line, main. And on this side, we'll do git log, one line. And I won't give it any branch, so it'll use feature D because that's the branch we're on. And we can see here that we've got our branches. Notice main does not appear anywhere in feature D. It is not an ancestor, so we can't do that fast forward merge. But we can see our commits here. So what we're going to use is we're going to use Git Rebase. And Git Rebase is going to take this D commit and temporarily pop it off of here. Now, I want to take one other note here. You'll notice that these commits have these unique identifiers, these hash values. I'm going to copy the one for D because up until now, our hashes have remained the same, right? We have A and B, and when you have a fast forward merge, it comes over and your hash stays the same. With a rebase, we're going to see something a little bit different here. All right, I don't need both of these. I've recorded that up there. So I'm going to close one of these sides so we can just look here at feature D. And what we want to do is, since we've switched over to feature D, I'm just going to make a note here that feature D is our active branch. And we are going to run git rebase main. So that is going to rebase the main branch onto our feature D branch. And this rebase is what allows us to pop off D. And then it's going to copy C and actually perform a fast forward merge for us here. So then our branches will be identical, and then it will merge this D. It'll apply D back on top of our feature D branch, right? So it'll sort of drop it back on here. So when we run this git rebase main, we end up with a merge conflict, okay? And that's because Git has done exactly what we talked about here. This A, B, and C. C has been fast forward merged over here on feature D, and then this D commit is what we want to reapply here. And that's where Git has run into trouble. So if we look at git log, one line here on our feature D branch, we can see we've got A, B, and C right here on here. This is what we have at the moment. But when Git tried to apply D, it hit this problem and said, hang on a second here. I don't know how to apply this. When I applied D last time, when I added it to my list, I added D right after B. But now I've got this C right after B. So do I put D right after B or right after C? What order do these need to go in? And so this is where our work comes into play. I'm working in VS Code. So VS Code actually has some nice features here to help us accept these. We can accept the current change, which is the head, right? So that's the branch that we have so far before our commit's been applied, right? So at this state, once we get to here, well, that value is C. But then our divergence here is this D commit we're trying to drop on. And you can see that unique identifier hash that appears down here to let us know that's what we're talking about. The commit message, D, appears there as well. And the value in that is D. So this is sort of two different possible futures that we went to from B. And so now that we're trying to bring them back together, Git's not sure how we do that. So Git has these shortcut links that you can click that will let you pull things in directly. I want to take a look at this as we would see it in an editor without those features. So I'm going to delete one of those and that'll just trigger it out. So these are indicators that Git adds, right? So the equal signs indicates the divide between the two branches. And then we have one possible history on one side and one possible history on the other side. In this case, it's an easy one to resolve because we can just get rid of these markers. And this is what we want. We want C and D, and they were already in the order we wanted. So we make those changes, and we're going to save them. So now that we've saved those changes, we need to tell Git, okay, let's make this part of this commit. So we're working on this D commit. We're going to do git add, and I like -u. -u is going to add anything from a file that is already part of the files that have been added. So here we're just working with letters.txt. That file is already part of our repo. It's been added in the past. So we're going to use git add -u. I hit enter. And at this point, that file has been staged. Okay, that's staged, ready to go here. And so if we look at git log one line, okay, that still only shows A, B, and C, because even though this commit is all ready to go, it hasn't been applied yet. We can preview what that commit's going to look like by giving it git diff -- staged. So that tells us what's different in the staged version that we have. And so when we do this, we can see that our diff here, the only thing we have is it adds the letter D. So that's exactly what we want this commit D to do. We want it to add the letter D, and in this case, we want it to add it right after C. So this looks good. We're good to go. We have tweaked our commit just the way we want. So we're going to do git rebase -- continue. And this is going to kick us into our editor to edit our message. Now, I've modified my editor. Instead of using the default Vim, because that's not the most user-friendly for everyone, I'm going to kick us into VS Code for editing my commit. All it wants here is it's giving me the opportunity to modify my message. I don't want to modify my message, so I'm going to save, and I'm going to close, and that will apply that commit. Now, if we take a look, git log -- one line, we can see we've got A, B, C, and then D has been applied on top. So we brought our D down here. But notice that our commit hash has changed, because this actually isn't the same D that we had a moment ago. Our commit is a unique moment in time. You know, it's a unique snapshot based on all the history that came before it. And because our D commit was built on top of B, but now it's built on top of C, it's actually a different commit. So it ends up with this different hash number here. So I'm going to call this, sometimes they call this D prime, right? I'm going to call this D modified, right? So my D modified commit now appears on the top. But it still has the change we want, right? That is still adding that letter D. And now, after all of this, we've set ourselves up such that we could do a fast forward merge. Because now our main branch is an ancestor of our feature D branch. And that's the whole reason that we go through the rebase to get ourselves to this point.